Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on forgotten weapons. I'm Ian. I'm here today at the Rock Island Auction House, but I'm not actually doing a video on a specific gun. I wanted to take a minute to address a comment that I actually get fairly regularly, especially when I'm doing work at Rock Island and also at the James Julia and other auction houses. And the comment is, of course, what you've heard before.
That belongs in a museum!
And you know what? I'm kind of torn because in some ways, yeah, a lot of these guns do belong in museums. But on the other hand, I really prefer to see them in the hands of private collectors. So the issue I see, and I'm going to speak in generalities here. I know there are some museum curators out there who are going to take issue with what I'm about to say, and that's fine. There are some fantastic curators who are absolutely the exception to this rule. But in general, once a gun, or anything else for that matter, goes into a museum, it goes into stasis. If you're lucky, that gun will show up under a glass display case somewhere, and it'll have a little placard that tells you probably what its name is and maybe a couple other facts about it. Only in the most extreme circumstances will you have any more information than that. And for the rest of time, basically, the only access anyone will ever have to it is to look at whatever side of it is showing through glass and the little placard. And that's it. If you're not lucky, the gun will not even get on display. It'll get donated to a museum, which will then put it in storage in a box in a climate-controlled basement somewhere, and nobody will ever see it again. Yeah, kind of like that. On the other hand, and the good side of that is nothing damaging is probably going to happen, short of the museum catching fire, which could happen to anyone. The piece will be preserved. That's what a museum offers, is the piece will absolutely be preserved. On the other hand, when a rifle or a firearm, especially something valuable and rare and frankly in these cases one of a kind, goes into a private collection, it's going into the hands of someone who is passionate about it and very interested in it. And that person is going to be in a position to actually learn things about the gun and from the gun. So rifles like this, if they go into a museum, are never going to get disassembled. Most museum curators would have a heart attack at the notion of disassembling a gun in their possession and potentially damaging it. A private collector, on the other hand, is going to understand how the gun works, and the only thing they have to lose is their own money. And if they want to take it apart, they can, and they will. And you know what? That's how we learn things about these guns, how they work, how they differ from the patent drawings that they're often based on, and elements that will explain why something performed the way it did in trials or in combat or in any other sort of historical situation. Typically, when you see me shooting a firearm, a very rare, obscure firearm, that gun is usually owned by a private individual who is willing to shoot it to see, because they want the experience of shooting it. They want to be able to capture it, especially in high speed on film. And that's something that typically only happens when a gun is in private hands. In addition, the collectors who buy these guns often have a lot of other similar or related firearms, and they can put that gun in context and truly understand more about it in a way that you don't typically get in a museum. When museums get one-of-a-kind guns like this, honestly, usually this sort of thing, unless it's specific to the goal and the focus of the museum, this sort of thing often goes into storage and never gets seen because it's not considered historically relevant enough. It doesn't pertain to the major events that a museum is set up to display. So I guess that's it in a nutshell, is in a museum, the gun pretty much goes into stasis. A lot of people can, hopefully, if it actually gets displayed, look at it, but they won't be able to learn anything more about it than that. The level of knowledge on the gun stops wherever it is when it goes to that museum. On the other hand, the guns in private collections aren't available to just anyone to look at, but they are in a position where they can be disassembled, they can be used, and they can truly be studied and learned from. And I think they're much more likely to be studied when they're in private hands, simply because the person who owns them is a person who is truly passionate about that particular gun enough to spend the money to acquire it. So I don't know that there's any definitive right or wrong answer to this, but I think that it's definitely a two-sided argument, much more than some people realize. So hopefully you have a little bit of food for thought, something to consider today. And I'd love to hear your opinions on the subject in the comments below. Let me know what you think. And I don't think we're going to come to any definitive yay or nay answer on museums versus private collections, but it's an interesting subject to discuss. So thank you for watching.